Hi, everyone. This is Beena Kavalam. I'm hopeful that some of you will join me on the call today. I've got no viewers yet, so I'm hopeful that some of you will join me live on the call. I've got a presentation, which I'll start in a few minutes, but I'm going to wait around until some folks join me. So hopefully you will. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. All right. Okay, so I sent out an invite, hopefully that some of you will be joining me on this call. I'm going to wait a little bit to get some folks on the call with me. But what we're going to cover today is a couple things. First is we're going to cover the, first what we're going to do is we're going to cover behavioral interviewing. All right, so that's what that's a topic for today. I've got an agenda, I've got some slides. But it's really going to be about you guys. I want to hear from you. What are some of the questions that you have that I can answer? So if you've got a question, I want to make sure that I can answer it. So please, please, please put it in the chat function. I'm going to be checking that. And the chat function should be on the screen that you see there. It should say something underneath there. It's the chat function underneath the picture with me, the screen with me. And we'll let me know some of the questions that you might have. And as I go through the deck, if you have any questions, put them into there. For right now, that's the best way to get this thing going, all right? I'm gonna give it I see that we've got a couple of people. We got 5 viewers. So please let me know who you are. I would love to know who you are so I can say hello. Give me a shout out on the, in the group so that I can say hello. I would love to hear from you guys. So we're going to do that, and then we are going to go through a presentation shortly. But I want to know who's on the call because I would love to talk to you guys. So if you're on the call, please do let me know. We're going to get started in about 1 minute as I get through the behavioral interviewing prep call. And I'm going to get my deck started. So let me just see who's on the call. Katyan, hey, thank you. Thank you very much for saying you're here. Yay, 1 person, I love it. Anybody else? Would love to hear from you guys. So we got a couple of other, Catherine, awesome. Anyone else, please, chime in as we go through. It's about 8:05 right now, Eastern time. So I'm gonna get started because I know you guys are busy people. So let's get started. I'm gonna start with the screen share. I've got a deck, a couple of slides for you guys. And then I'll be sending you the deck as well. So don't worry if you miss something, you also have this video. But we're going to, hey Dwayne, and we're also going to be going through some types of the process for the next few weeks that you'll be going through for behavioral interviewing. So let's, with that, jump right in. I'm going to share my screen. Hey Vivian. All right, let's get to... There we go. So you guys should see on your screen right now, you should see Unlocking Career Potential Behavioral Interviewing Prep Call with me, all right? So the first thing we're gonna talk about today is the CTLS interview process. We're gonna talk a little bit more high level about that. We're gonna talk about the STAR format. You guys have seen the CAR format at CTLS, at Core Skills from P&G. Procter & Gamble, but the STAR format's basically the same thing. It's just my little tweak on that, and I like the STAR process. That's what I'm recommending, but it's the same thing. Context and situation and task are very similar. We're going to talk about how do you pick your stories. So I'm going to take you through a process. We're actually going to do an exercise tonight to help you generate and mine for some of those stories as well. And then we'll talk about how do you organize your responses. And then at the very end, I've got time for Q&A. And so I'm going to stay on as long as you need me. As long as there's questions, I'm going to stay on, okay? Because I want to make sure that you guys get the most out of today's session. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat where you said hello. I would love to hear from that so that I can answer some of those questions as we go. All right, with that, let's start. So here is the interview process timeline, okay? And this should look familiar to you because I sent it out yesterday. But I wanted this to be a recap for you so that you have, hey Pauline, so we're gonna have, so that we have a, you know what to do when. Okay, so resume drop. I know some of you have been frantically, trying to schedule time with me to review your resumes. My calendar's booked. There's a reason, because it's a pretty crazy time. So if I've reviewed your resume at least once already, just give me, bear with me here if you need some additional advice. Okay. Please take the counsel that I gave you the first time, and I'll try to see if I can work in getting it a second review for those folks that I specifically promised. Okay, I promised because there were some issues with their resume, not just because. Okay, all right. So May 9th, which is in 5 days, and that's on Monday, is when you're supposed to apply. The application period is for applying for jobs on MBA Focus. And I got a question today about what's the optimal number of resumes I should drop? How many should I go? I would say drop for whatever you think is relevant for you. Like, if you don't apply for every single job out there just because you can, apply to roles that you actually are interested in. And if you're interested in, say, 10, okay, let's narrow your focus a little bit. I would say optimal range 3 to 4, 2 to 3. If you're really serious, I want you to go all in on these. So don't just apply or drop your resume if you're just kind of meh about that. All right. Fellows applying to P&G online P&G brand camp, you need to complete that online assessment by May 16th, which is on a Monday. Okay. That's also the day of our P&G brand camp prep call. All right, so hopefully you will have completed that online assessment before then, and then you can have we'll have our prep call that evening. All right, but that online assessment is pretty critical. You can't otherwise do it. You can't they won't let you through the process. So what's going to happen is after you submit your resumes and you get them in through this process, right? The partners are going to review them. All right, and then they're going to say yay or nay on you. And that final yay or nay list is going to be provided to us on Friday. Don't know my dates here. I should have put the days in here. On Friday, May 20th. Okay, so Friday, May 20th, you're going to get like some type of context. You're going to get some type of information. Say, hey, go in, check the the MBA Focus and see what is available to you here. All right, so fellows are going to then schedule your interviews during this time period. This is very important. If you miss this window, okay, these 5-day window, you're going to be up a creek, okay? Because you need to make sure that you are able to, if you're accepted for a partner interview, make sure you schedule that interview. It's very important, okay? And then the final interviews are going to be sent out to the partners and to you guys by the 27th, which is, I think, a Friday, all right? So whatever you have to do, if you have to print this out, post it on your bulletin board, make sure you know the schedule, because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity just because you didn't have that. Okay. All right, I saw that a question came in here. Let me see what the question is. Okay, I see a lot of these questions here for people who are doing the OP. Do you recommend interview at CPLS or OP? Okay, so I got a couple of questions that came in here. I'm gonna do me a favor here. I'm gonna just answer them at the end, okay, just to keep us going here. I'll answer them at the end, going through every single question. So your question will be definitely answered, but I'm gonna not take, you could keep them coming, keep those questions coming, but I will answer every single question toward the end, okay, if not before, all right? All right, so here is the STAR method. Okay, this should look very familiar to you. You're gonna, this is how the STAR method is an approach for handling behavioral interview questions. Now, one person asked me, why do we have to do behavioral interview questions? Well, the reason you do behavioral interviewing is because it really is a predictive format, right? They're trying to say, hey, you've done this behavior in the past. Well, then you most likely will do these same behaviors in the future. That's why they're asking, and they're trying to find out specifically what you did. Not what your team did, not what we did, but rather what you did. So it's very, very important. I know we hammered this home at Core Skills, but I'm going to do it here because I'm hearing some folks, use the we thing a lot. And although it's a very PC thing to do, in this case, I want you not to be PC, okay? I want you to go in and say all about you, what you did. So focusing on the situation. The situation is something where it's background, okay? Situation is, it's really, what are some of the background to the situation? You don't want to tell the whole life story of this situation, okay? But maybe about like a couple of sentences, or a couple, maybe like a paragraph, or like no more than like a minute or so you want to spend on situation, okay? Because it's just giving you some background. Don't go on for hours on this, okay? The task is, I like to call it that one statement. It's like, this is what I was charged with doing. And when I go through my example toward the end, you'll hear a little bit more about what I was talking about. Okay? So situation can be a little bit longer, can be a minute, maybe a minute and a half. Task is very short. It's like 30 seconds. You're just saying, so I was charged with doing this. Okay? And then you say, this was my goal. This was what I was supposed to do. Action are, what were the steps that you took? Okay? What did you do? I led a team of 50 people. I researched this, the options. I analyzed the data. I did, okay? They want to know what you did, the actions you took. Result, this is the big one. And if you guys, I know a lot of you, some of you aren't my fellows on here, and welcome to everybody who's not my fellow. Welcome to everyone. I'm glad you came on the call. Thank you so much for joining us. But with my fellows, I really focus in on the result. If you had me review your resume, I'm always about the numbers. I'm always about putting in those results into your resume. This is why, okay? When they see those results on your resume, this is going to help you with the behavioral interview, because it's going to help them kind of look through your resume and say, okay, now I want to find out more about this, okay? So that'll help with the walk me through your resume piece. It will also help you as you are practicing for these behavioral interview questions, because you'll have known already what the result is, right? Because you were forced to by your demanding coach to put that into your resume, okay? So that's the key important part. Can you hold on one second? I'm gonna sneeze, and I don't want to sneeze on camera. Hold on. Okay, so the key piece here is that the result is the end product of this. Okay, it's the actions that you took some actions, and here was the quantifiable result. Typically, this is a number, or it's we increased sales by 50%. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's we were able to complete the project on time and with quality. Or it could be this other aspect, some type of tangible outcome. Okay, that is important. This is the way that when you're sharing your story. This whole result is probably the most important piece of this, because it then shows that you drive results. Okay, I'm going to move on here. So, how do you pick your stories? All right, this is a big question that I get. Because you might be thinking, well, I have a great story, but it's from like 10 years ago. I would say leverage your best stories, period. Okay? So if it was something from college and you're only 5 to 6 years out, definitely use it. If it was something that was from grade school or kindergarten, you could probably hold back. I don't think you need that one. Okay? So to help with this, I want to have you guys just close your eyes for a minute. All right, I want you to just take a breath, and if you guys are on my team here, we did this exercise just to relax a bit. You've had a long day, and I know I have, and I want you to just kind of sit in your chair at the edge of your chair, or if you'd like, stand with me. All right, and roll your shoulders back 3 times, and take a couple of deep breaths. Okay, breathe in and exhale. One more time. You can close your eyes if you'd like. Breathe in and exhale. Leveraging your gut on this one, imagine that there's a balloon in your stomach and you're expanding, you're inhaling air to fill the balloon. Okay? And the goal here is just to relax after a long, hard day. So take two more deep breaths with me. Okay, roll those shoulders back, forwards if you need them. Okay, hold them back. And close your eyes and breathe in one more time. Breathe in. Exhale. Okay. Now from this space, I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to think about what are some of your biggest accomplishments that you have made in this past year, just this past year. Okay? Anything that you are proud of at home, at work, in your life, but write down those biggest accomplishments for yourself. And we're going to start it here, but if you need more time, come back to this exercise after our webinar tonight. Okay? I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to write as many as you can from this past year. Okay, so that was 45 seconds. It goes pretty quickly, right? So the idea here is you're trying to free write. That's why I had you calm down a little bit so that you could just get in touch with what's in your mind, right? Now, you might have had a block, right? You might have been, I couldn't really think of as much, or it flowed so easily. But I really want you to challenge yourself to write as many of your accomplishments from this past year, and then go back 3 years, and then 5 years, and then 10 years. And I want you to take some time. When I did this exercise, it took me a couple of hours, to be honest. And I had pages and pages, and some of them were small. Some of them were small things. Like I remember I wrote down how I helped a friend of mine. And it meant a lot to me that I could help advise my friend. And then I looked back and I saw that I had done similar things for other friends. And that was what I was noticing was my biggest accomplishment. The things I was most proud of in my life was how I was help coaching my friends and colleagues at work. And it was only when I started realizing that, wow, I wasn't really happy with a lot of the stuff I was doing at work. I was doing great stuff, don't get me wrong. And I had it listed on my accomplishment list. But the things that really excite me, that really lit me up, were the impact I made on the people that had asked me for help. And so that was when I knew, hey, this is something that's telling for me. And it could be for you. It can also be a great way to just look back and see all that you accomplished. It can be quite humbling. So if you're feeling a little bit, "Oh, I don't want to do this exercise," I promise you, go to a cafe, even if you don't want to do it tonight, go to a cafe and, just give yourself an hour or two where you just get a notebook and you write as many of accomplishments and things that you're proud of. It can be as small as leading a presentation, for a small group of people, or volunteering somewhere, or it could be as big as, you spoke on stage in front of 1,000 people. Big or small, all are good, okay? So don't judge it, but just write as many of these accomplishments down as possible, okay? We don't have enough time to go through this entire exercise tonight, so I'm gonna trust that you will go and complete this exercise on your own. All right, with that, I'm gonna share with you now how to process your stories. So if you have an opportunity, I want you to open up your Excel, okay? Open up a spreadsheet if you have it. If you don't have a spreadsheet available to you, don't worry. You can always do this afterwards, okay? So what you're gonna do is, after you've done this whole writing down in your notebook exercise, okay, of all these accomplishments and successes, I want you to open up Excel and start writing them into Excel, okay? If you're not an Excel person, you could do it in a table or you could do it in Word, but Excel is just, for me, it was a lot easier to do, okay? And then for each of those accomplishments, okay, especially the ones that are within 1 to 5 years, you're gonna write a short summary sentence or phrase. So one of my stories, which I'll go through in a minute, was a yogurt, which I called the yogurt story, which you'll find out what that is in a minute. This was the sentence I wrote about that. I convinced a critical client to share her knowledge by leveraging EQ, or emotional intelligence. And here's the result. We were able to complete the project on time and with quality once she was on board. Okay? It doesn't have to be something that everybody understands. It has to be that I understand it, okay? Or you for yours, right? So don't worry if you don't have it all properly figured out or all that stuff. It's just enough so that you can trigger enough of the story so that you remember it in your head. So for People First, it's an initiative I created at Accenture when I was there to reduce turnover on my team. And here's the result. It was a 0% turnover while People First was initiated for my team. Okay, so I'm asking you to write down this short sentence, but also to include the result, because that's going to be telling to see whether or not you should use the story for the STAR model or for the behavioral interview. If you can't have a real result to it, if there's no outcome, if I made a pizza one day and I was really proud of it, that's really not a story that I'm going to use for business, all right? And so you're going to weed through a lot of your successes. Some of them are home successes. So even the home successes may be relevant, okay? I don't want to shortchange it. But, the idea that I made a pizza one day and, I cooked a great meal for my family and that was a good, important moment for me, that's not really going to translate to the workplace, okay? So think about really focusing on the result. And if you have any questions on this, just make sure you put them into the notes. Oops. Okay. So once you have, and so this is like my sample spreadsheet, okay? So once you have your story, all right, and you know your story, then you can then talk about the success traits of that story, okay? And the reason I put down success traits, it's something for me that once you're going to develop your own list of success traits, okay? And typically success traits can be things that are relevant to the role in your industry, okay? So specifically like what's relevant or what's needed for behavioral interviewing or behaviors that are necessary for brand management at Johnson & Johnson might be different than brand management at P&G. And it may be different than supply chain management at P&G, okay? So really getting clear on what, from your informational interviews for each of those companies that you're interviewing for, right? What are they looking for? What are those success traits, characteristics that they're looking for? And then that's what you should include. That's what you should be looking for in your stories. Okay? So for my yogurt story, which I'll share with you now, when I was working at, you'll see some of these characteristics, and maybe you won't. Maybe you won't see it as a characteristics in there, and tell me if you don't. But here's my story, my yogurt story. So when I was working at Accenture, I was tasked with engaging this critical client who was a key knowledge. She was a subject matter expert. And her knowledge, she had built this system, this in-depth legacy system that my team was there to replace. And so the success of our project really lied on the ability to interface with that system and her knowledge of that system. The problem is that she wasn't willing to share the information she had with our team. So that's my situation. And my task was I was tasked with convincing this subject matter expert that she should be on board and share her information with our team. So what did I do? What was the actions that I took? And you'll notice here, I'm going to add a little humor in here because that's a great way to really personalize the story. So every morning I would meet with this key client, and she was trying to think of a PC way to say this. She was not receptive to my questions. She would sit there in silence, or when she did speak, she was belligerent. And each morning, I would try to meet with her for a breakfast meeting and talk with her about the different issues that we had at hand, and she would sit there with her arms crossed. And so each morning I had this situation happen. She would tell me no information, and then one morning we met over breakfast, and she opened up and she brought out this fancy yogurt. And so to kind of break the ice, I asked her, I said, "What's that yogurt? It looks very interesting." And she goes, "Oh, you wouldn't be interested in this." I said, "No, I want to find out more. It looks delicious." And so I asked her about this yogurt, and apparently it's this very European yogurt that you can only get at this one location, as she told me. You can only get this at this one store about 25 miles away. And so she was telling me about how much she loved this yogurt. And once I kept asking her questions, she told me why. And later that night, I went to the grocery store and I bought her that yogurt. And I shared it with her at the morning meeting and said, "I wanted to thank you. The yogurt's delicious. I took your advice and I went there, and it was well worth the trip." And the look on her face was a mixture of surprise, but also at the same time, she almost looked very emotional. And it was as if I listened to her when no one was listening to her. And I could tell that that was what she needed, because she felt like she was being replaced. And so I bought the yogurt, I shared it with her, and then she started to open up to me. She started to share some of the information with me because she saw that I saw her as a valued resource, as somebody who actually listened to her, and was worth listening to. And those are the actions that I took. Okay? I went a little bit off because I wanted to explain the background, but those are the actions that I took. The result was that I was able to deliver the project details that we needed. She came on board and she was willing to share enough of the information so that we could interface successfully with this project. That's the result, right? We were able to implement on time and with quality. And I always like to add in a little bit of a success. And the success is just an extra oomph, okay? It's optional. It's just an extra little thing that I like to add in there to really hook them, okay? And the success in this case was that I became the, she wouldn't talk to anyone else on my team except me. So I became the main liaison for this key critical, this very critical person on the client team. And I was the only person she would talk to from on my team from Accenture. And then when we would come on board for additional projects, the senior partner had to bring me along because I was the only one, the main liaison for this key client. So you see how it shows that I'm now, you know, the actions that I took led to a certain result, and how now there's a little bit of oomph of why, like, there's even more. It's like the cherry on top of that success. So that's what I want you to do, is come up with your stories. You're gonna put some stories in here that you're never gonna use, okay? You're gonna have stories that you know, I don't know, maybe you just don't, they just aren't relevant, or you can't communicate them in a good way or a passionate way. But in my yogurt story, okay, I know it's just about a cup of yogurt or a couple cups of yogurt, but the reason it was important was because it was showing some of the skills, right? Could you tell there was leadership in there, right? Leadership is not always about being the, you know, the person at the head of the room always yelling. Leadership can also be from the back of the room, right? Leadership can be by just listening. Emotional intelligence, right? I had to read her body cues. I had to understand what was really going on behind her not being receptive at all, right? How do you deal with difficult people? That was a very difficult situation. And problem solving, right? So these are some of the things that I think are incorporated in that yogurt story, okay? So when I'm asked a question, a behavioral interview question around these areas, I potentially could use this yogurt story for those, to answer that question, okay? So this is an example of how you would go about, you would document all of your stories first in the first story column, and then after you think about it, for the top 10 or 15 or 20 that you really think are relevant, you're gonna go back and you're gonna add in your situation, task, action, result, and possibly success, and your success traits. So what's next, right? The next step is really to practice interviewing. And if you don't think that, you know, where am I going to get my interview questions? Just Google it, okay? But I want you to do one more step. I want you to do behavioral interviewing, not just behavioral interview questions, as you can see here, that just automatically popped up, but by your functional area, okay? So there's going to be different behavioral interview questions for supply chain, for finance, for consulting, for brand, okay? And sometimes if you even go even further and put the company's name in, you may also get some additional questions as well. All right. But that's just a way that I would recommend you go about just getting and start to practice and start implementing some of these questions. Once you start to practice, you'll understand what are some of those success traits that they're looking for based off the questions. And that's what you're going to look for in your situation. Whoops. So the STAR story grid. At Core Skills, we did talk about, you know, that personal competitive advantage. Like, what do you uniquely bring to the table versus everybody else? The reason I'm highlighting that here, and I want you to document it for yourself here, is because it's important for you to communicate that key element. What do you uniquely bring that nobody else does? Okay? Because everybody brings something to table. It's that it could be your specific knowledge on a special area, or it could be a unique blend of skills that you bring to the table. But everybody has something, okay? And the other key important part of that impact statement is really understanding, here's what I uniquely bring, and why should they care? That's the last part that's important. Remember, guys, why should they care? Why should the person across from me care that, Beena Kavalam is a great, I don't know, I'm trying to think of my thing. Bad example, but why should, I'll give you my thing. Why should Beena Kavalam is a great speaker, okay? Why should you guys care? Well, I can communicate a message better to you, okay? That's the point, right? You're trying to understand what is that thing for the other person, okay? And I've hammered this enough, right, as we've gone through this process. So I'm hopeful that you guys understand that. If not, make sure you put a question in the question box. So here's a grid that you can use. This is actually one from MLT. You can just put the behavioral interview question and then the situation, task, action, result. Both work. I added the impact statement piece to the top. Okay, so great. That's the story grid from MLT. Here's another example of another way that you can do a grid for yourself, okay? So here is the story, and then I put together the star example of that story, and then, hey, what does it mean? So I would have a long list of maybe 10 to 15 different leadership or success traits all across the side of this, okay? Maybe it's leadership, maybe it's emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, innovation, creativity. But it really is going to be dependent upon your specific area, okay? Creativity may not be relevant to supply chain, okay? So those traits across the top are going to be dependent upon your research of those behavioral interview questions by your industry and even by your company potentially, okay? And, I would put those all together, right? And then I would check off the ones, or maybe even darken the cell, right? For the ones that are relevant to that yogurt story. So when I'm practicing later, I have my cheat sheet, okay? So I know my stories. And once you go through it like 2 or 3 times, they become second nature, okay? And you're gonna become very comfortable with your, say, top 10 stories. I became really comfortable with those top 10. I had like 20 stories, but I'm gonna be honest, after my top 10, I just kept reusing them, okay? 10 was pretty much it. I had about 20 to 30, but 10 was the one that I really knew. Like those were the ones that were my go-to. I went for every single thing. The other ones, I can't really remember them even now, but I remember the yogurt story. I remember my people first story. I remember another story that I had with a leadership story that I had. There are a couple key examples that are going to stay with you for life. And those are the ones that you're going to say over and over again, okay? But this is a tool that you can use as you go through this work. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go and see if there's any questions. See if I had anything here. Oh yeah, next steps is you want to practice, practice, practice. And what I'm going to recommend is that you practice with one another. When I was in business school, one of my good friends and I, he and I were both, going after very similar companies. And so we decided to work together. So he and I, Mark and I, we would go to this community college that was halfway between our houses, okay? And at night, we would go in there and sneak into one of those rooms and practice. He would pretend to interview me, maybe 4 or 5 questions for half an hour, and then I would, give me some feedback, saying, nah, that wasn't a great story, or this was a great one, or no. And then I would interview him. And we would do this about once a week for about the 8 weeks during the critical peak period for behavioral interviewing and also marketing case questions as well. But we did this, and after a while, it became like the feedback from him was so perfect because, you really don't know how you're presenting to yourself, right? You think you're doing great, but you may not. So it's great to get that other person's perspective. And, you can help one another. Remember, this is all about a team effort here. You can help one another and go after the roles together. The other thing I recommend is that you record yourself. Now, you may not be as comfortable to put this out on YouTube. I get it, but you may want to, at least an unlisted version, and send it to some friends, and get their feedback on it. Because it's important to record yourself because you want to see how are you coming across? Do you have a weird facial tic that you don't want to see? That's the things that you want to make sure. Stop. Okay, so now you can see me. And so yeah, I mean, the idea here is that you're gonna keep doing this. You're gonna keep doing the. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. The whole idea, okay, is about the practicing. And you might have a weird facial tic, okay, that you don't even know about, right? I'm using my hands all over the place. It could be really distracting to the person that you're sitting across from, okay? So by recording yourself and seeing how what you're doing, it's really important, okay? And the other key thing too is to take a breath and practice and actually make it seem like a practice interview. So if you need to do it in front of a mirror or in front on a YouTube thing, or even just do it in iMovie and record yourself and don't share with anybody, practicing is going to be the most important thing that's going to be the differentiator between those who get roles and those who don't. So practice with friends, practice with yourself, practice online, and practice even more. Okay? With that, I'm going to now go into the questions. And we're going to start from the bottom because I promised I would. Here we go. All right. I liked how all these people said that they were here. Very nice. Okay, quick question. For people who are going to OP, do you recommend we interview at CTLS or OP? Is there a better chance of landing an internship at CTLS? You know what? I don't know. I'm not familiar with OP and how their success rates or anything like that. I will say that if, since you're going to be not there at OP, there's an overlap of days. If you're going to be going to OP, you're going to be leaving and you're not going to be able to interview directly at CTLS. So if you're able to interview at OP, go for it. If you are going to be If you still are going to be applying and dropping your resume, which you can do for CTLS, even though you will not be there, you can still drop your resume and they will interview you afterwards. I will say this, we have a very deep relationship with our partners. Now, I don't know OP's relationship, but I will say that we have a very deep relationship. We know these partners, we've worked with them, we're hand by hand. I know them. So if you're going to apply through a program, I would hope that it would be MLT, but I'm going to put this out there. P&G Brand Camp, we are the #1 diversity sourced candidate, right? We're the #1 source for diversity candidates for P&G Brand Camp in the world. Just putting it out there. I don't know, my stats for the other programs are pretty good too, but just putting it out there, not to brush my shoulders off a little bit, but we've had a success story ever since. I mean, we've been at least 1/3 of the candidates, actually more than that, because there's only 40. So yeah, we've actually we had 15 last year in our group, and so that was a big success story for us. And I don't know if OP had similar feedback. Okay, quick question. You've talked a lot about resumes. Should we be aiming to include cover letters for each job as well? Great question, Dwayne. What I would recommend is if you are a career switcher, okay, if you're thinking about switching into something else from where you were before, and your resume doesn't scream consulting because you weren't a consultant before, or it doesn't scream brand because you didn't work in marketing or brand before, I would recommend that you do. And here's why. Now, some people might say, they're just going to throw it away, whatever. I see it as another marketing tool for you. Really communicating and conveying, why are you different? What is your point of difference? Why should they care? Okay? These are the types of things that you can communicate in a cover letter that you can't just communicate. You can communicate, but maybe not fully in your resume. The other key piece is why that specific functional area. So if you're interested in consulting, why consulting? If you're interested in brand, why brand? Tell us a little bit of why you're switching in from another industry. If you're also interested in consulting, or if you're interested in in that specific company, tell them why. You know, it could be a very compelling story. Once I heard, you know, somebody talk about their interest in Nike, and it was because when they were growing up, you know, this was they would always visualize themselves as like Michael Jordan or, you know, as one of the stars. And, you know, when he had a tough time growing up, that was what drove him through that, you know, and like that was kind of what spurred him to move forward and gave him hope. And, you know, you think about that and you're like, wow, just hearing that story kind of just touches me again. Like, I just feel like, wow, you know, like that, hearing that story. Well, when you hear that person talk about it in an interview, and then you hear them even convey it in a cover letter, you know, just that the impact of your brand, that adds something. Now, if you don't have time and it's optional and it's either that or not submit the resume at all, submit the resume, okay? This is the frosting, okay? The cover letter's the frosting, but the frosting can also be sometimes the best part of the cake, right? So, not always, but you know what I'm saying? It can be. So, you know, make sure if you're gonna do it well, okay? Do you know when you'll get the feedback from our core skills mock interviews? Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Great question. I thought I was going to get it this week. It turns out that I won't be getting it now until Monday. So I do want to apologize to everybody. I thought I thought it was me just getting the forms and that would be it. But apparently it has to be coded and it has to a lot of other stuff, and I just wasn't aware of that. So it won't be coming until next Monday. I'm going to try and look through the feedback, send it out to you guys. And if there's anything that's really pressing, I want you guys to just email me and text me. Next week's going to be the week after next, the 16th is going to be extremely busy for me. But the next week, I should have some time, even though it's going to be still busy, I should have some time to answer some questions or at least send a voice memo back. Are there any other questions, you guys? Okay, it doesn't look like it. I think I answered everything. Sweet. All right, you guys. So that's basically this today's session. If you do have any other additional questions, feel free to reach out to me or send me a note. I want to do a quick plug for some of the other workshops that we'll be doing. I'm going to be doing a marketing case prep call next Wednesday. No, I'm sorry. Next Tuesday, because there was another call on Wednesday night, which I think I listed all of them out in your email, so you should have that. But I'm going to be doing that call, and the key thing about this is that marketing case is a very, it's not your typical, it's not completely consulting case, and it's not behavioral, okay? So I really want, if you're going to be interviewing for behavioral, for marketing work through CTLS or even OP down the line, most likely most firms are going to ask you some marketing case questions. It just happens. Even though they say they're not, they're going to, okay? So make sure you attend that session. It's going to be valuable, all right? And then finally for Brand Camp folks, P&G Brand Camp folks, there's going to be a workshop on the 16th where I'm going to be doing mock interviews. And so those are going to be live mock interviews. You know, I'm going to be asking each person about, oh, great point, I'm going to be asking those people about the, I'm doing mock interviews on that day. A question just came in from Tai T, and it was about the time trade. If you had some issues with my time trade, I don't know what it is. It keeps, I've been checking into it today and it said everything was open and working fine. So send me an email, let me know your availability for that day and we'll try to work it out. I don't know what's going on with the technology, but send me an email, let me know what the issue is, what time you can make it. Right now, I think I'm available. I don't know. I don't think anybody booked anything because if you've had issues for the 9th. Oh. Huh. Okay. Nobody's booked anything. So I will look through that and I'm going to just hold this. Yeah. No, it's open completely. The 16th is completely open for me. So I will have to just email me, okay? And then we'll work through it offline, okay? Thanks everybody. Wait, let me just check to see if there's any other questions. Last minute questions. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So I hopefully answered everything. Thanks everybody for taking time out tonight, and have a good evening.